YouTube, how we doing, family? It's your boy, Yo, and this is another episode of Yo Hoops. We go through every NBA game every day. Today's Monday, January 27th, and we have a 12-game NBA card. I'm going to walk you through every game, let you know which teams I like the most, and I have two highlighted selections for today. I do this every day for free, so make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Without further ado, let me get into the recap. Recapping yesterday, there was only one game played, but we did drop our highlighted play of the day. We took the Oklahoma City Thunder, laying 13 points against the Portland Blazers. The game looked good about 3 quarters into it, but the Blazers ended up winning the fourth quarter by 5 points, and the Thunder only won the game by 10, so they blew the cover. It happens. We're now 26-14 against the spread on all highlighted plays, still up over 10 units, but let's get back in that win column. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and let me get into today's games. In our first matchup, we have the Detroit Pistons in Cleveland taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cavs are laying 10 points, and the total is 235. We know the Cavs have been exceptional against the spread this season, but they are currently on a 3-game skid. They've lost their last 3 games outright, and that's as extended favorites. When I look on the other side, the Pistons have been hooping. They're now 9-4 in the new year, and that's winning a lot of those games outright as underdogs. So this is kind of two teams headed in different directions, at least recently. When I look at the injury reports, Evan Mobley does return for Cleveland, but it looks like Karis LeVert, Dean Wade, and Isaac Okoro will not play in this one. On the Pistons side, Tobias Harris is questionable. While the return of Mobley is huge for Cleveland, I think it takes him a few games to get his footing back. When I look at the recent matchups between the Cavs and the Cavs have only covered a 10-point spread against the Pistons once in the last 5 meetings between these teams. So I think the Pistons can keep this game competitive. We're taking Pistons plus the 10 points as our first selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the LA Lakers in Charlotte taking on the Charlotte Hornets. Lakers are laying 6 points, and the total is 222. Laying points on the road with the Lakers is automatically a spot I don't want to be in. This season, they're just 3-5 against the spread in this spot as road favorites, so you're losing money. They did beat Golden State in their last outing, and that meeting was in Golden State, but that just means we need the Lakers to win twice in a row as road favorites. The Hornets are profitable in this situation. They're 12-9 against the spread as home underdogs. They're also 3-1 in their last 4 games outright. And we know that. We've been cashing with the Hornets. They've been winning plus money on the money line. I think the Lakers are overvalued in this spot. I think the Hornets win this game outright, but I do want the 6 points in my back pocket. So we're taking Charlotte plus the 6 points as our first highlighted selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Houston Rockets in Boston taking on the Boston Celtics. Celtics are laying 6.5 points, and the total is 222.5. Looking at the injury reports for this one, so Cam Whitmore is questionable for the Rockets, and on the Celtics side, Al Horford and Derek White are questionable. I really want to see if Derek White plays because, in my opinion, he's an integral piece to the Celtics. Home favorites is just typically the spot where you don't want to be with the Celtics. So this season, they're just 8-15 against the spread, laying points at home. You're burning your bankroll betting with them in this spot. Houston typically plays their best ball at home in Houston, but recently they've been printing on the road as well. When I look, they're now 5-2-1 against the spread as road dogs. So this is Houston's spot while the Celtics have been fumbling in this. While I do want to see if Derek White plays, I think the Rockets can compete, if not win this game outright. The Celtics beat the Rockets 109-86 in Houston, and that was on the 3rd of January in their last meeting. I think the Rockets return the favor here. We're taking the Rockets plus 6.5 as our next selection of today. In our next matchup, we have the Memphis Grizzlies in New York taking on the New York Knicks. Knicks are laying 3.5 points, and the total is 242.5. Both of these teams have been playing well recently. The Grizzlies are currently on a 6-game win streak, while the Knicks are on a 3-game win streak, and they aired out the Kings in their last meeting. We were on the Kings in that one. The Grizz typically play their best ball at home, but they are 8-5 against the spread as road underdogs, so they've been profitable even in this spot. When I look at the Knicks, they're actually surprisingly strong home favorites. Because they're such a big market team, I don't necessarily like riding with teams like that, but they're 12, 9, and 1 ATS, so hey, you're profitable betting with New York at home. This game is tough for me because I don't necessarily want to fade either of these teams. But in a coin flip, I would rather have the points or the plus money on my side. So we're taking the Grizzlies plus the 3.5 points as our next selection of today. In our next matchup, we have the New Orleans Pelicans in Toronto taking on the Toronto Raptors. Pelicans are laying 1 point and the total is 232.5. It's a pick 'em here. Toronto's been absolutely exceptional as home underdogs. They're now 14, 5, and 1 against the spread in this situation. It's amazing. The Pelicans on the other side are one of the worst teams in the league laying points on the road. Just 1 and 4 against the spread this season. So, two completely opposite spots here. I know the Pelicans are getting more healthy, but I still have to lean towards the Raptors. They've played well recently, and like I just told you, ATS as home dogs, fantastic. Instead of picking a side here, even though I do lean towards the Raptors, I do like the total. So looking at this 232.5, the Pelicans only average 109.2 points per game. They're one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. And then the Raptors average 111.3. That sets us well below this total. And neither of these teams are big 3-point attempting teams either. So these teams don't shoot threes. They don't average a lot of points. I don't expect this to be a super defensive game, but I think the 232.5 is set too high. So we're taking the under 232.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Orlando Magic in Miami taking on the Miami Heat. Heat are laying 1 point and the total is 207.5. You guys know I'm automatically looking at the under here. Orlando has one of the bottom offenses in the league while having one of the top defenses, so it automatically puts you in a good spot for an under. On the sides, the Magic finally showed me something last game. So Paolo and Franz played well, and they beat the Pistons in convincing fashion. We knew that they'd finally have a bounce back, and I wanted them to show me something before we start betting with them. Orlando's the more talented squad, and finally getting healthy here, I think they stack another win. The Heat are nothing special as home favorites. They're just 8-8 against the spread this season. So we're taking the Magic money line as our next selection of today. No point in taking the plus 1 point, in my opinion. You might as well take the even money on the money line. Let's move. In our next meeting, we have the Sacramento Kings in Brooklyn taking on the Brooklyn Nets. Kings are laying 10.5 points, and the total is 222.5. The Kings' win streak's finally coming to an end. They're finally starting to taper off. They were rolling coming into the new year, but they've now filled the cover in 3 games in a row. So they're starting to concern me a little bit. We've been losing a little money with the Kings. Brooklyn hasn't been great as home dogs themselves. They're just 6-10 against the spread in this spot, but they did cover in 2 out of their last 3 games at home. So they're somewhat turning a new leaf here. The Nets are still extremely banged up. When I look at the injury report, they're still without Cam Thomas, without Cameron Johnson, and Ben Simmons is questionable. While this is a decent bounce back spot for the Kings since they've let down in their last 3 games in a row, but I just can't count on them laying double digits. This is too big of a spread for me to lay with the Kings, so we're taking the Nets plus the 10.5 as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Atlanta Hawks in Minnesota taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Wolves are laying 10.5 points, and the total is 218.5. Laying points at home with Minnesota is one of the worst spots in the league. They're now 4-14 against the spread as home favorites. You're not losing money really with any other team more. Atlanta has been proficient as road underdogs. They're 9-8 against the spread. The thing for me in this one is the Wolves were hoping in their last game. They went up against the Denver Nuggets and they aired them out, won the game by 29, and that game was in Minnesota. They went crazy in their last one, and now they're locked in at home again with no travel. When I look on the Hawks side, they're extremely banged up in this one. So the Hawks have Trey Young, Zachary Risache, and Jalen Johnson all ruled out, and then DeAndre Hunter is questionable. On the Timberwolves side, Dante DiVincenzo is ruled out, but I just don't think the Wolves fail to cover at home in every game. Like I told you guys, they're 4-14. I don't think they're going to have a 15% win record against the spread. They got to win in some spots, and this is a perfect lock-in spot to air out the Hawks by 20 plus. We're taking the Timberwolves laying the 10.5 points as our second highlighted play of today. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Denver Nuggets in Chicago taking on the Chicago Bulls. Nuggets are laying 8.5 points, and the total is 246. This isn't my favorite game on the board and not a game I'll personally be having money or betting on. Both of these teams are middle of the pack in this spot. So the Bulls are 7-1 as home dogs this season, while the Nuggets are 7-9 as road favorites. So like I'm saying, against the spread, they're both about 50-50 in this spot. Kobe White is questionable for the Bulls, and then Denver has basically a clean IR. I think the Nuggets should lock in after getting aired out in their last game against the Wolves. They're clearly the better team in this matchup, so we'll take the Nuggets laying the 8.5 as our next selection of today, but it's a lean for me. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Washington Wizards in Dallas taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Mavs are laying 11.5 points, and the total is 231. When I look at the injury reports, the Mavericks are still extremely banged up. So they'll be without Dwight Powell, Derek Lively, Najee Marshall, and Dante Exum in this game. On the Wizards side, they'll be without Malcolm Brogdon and Sadiq Bey. Even in this shape, I think the Mavs can absolutely air out the Wizards. When I look at the Wizards' recent play, they've only covered a 12-point spread once out of their last 4 games. The Wizards stay getting blown out. We know that. They just aren't a good team. I think the Mavs win this game and honestly win it in dominant fashion. We're taking the Mavs minus 11.5 as our next selection of today. A couple player props that I would look at in this one, guys, are PJ Washington over 16.5 points. He's been absolutely hooping. And look at Kyrie, his points and his assist props. Let's move. In our next matchup, we have the Milwaukee Bucks in Utah taking on the Utah Jazz. Bucks are laying 9 points, and the total is 236.5. Bucks have been rolling recently. They're 8-2 in their last 10. And they've been getting ATS covers. The Jazz have started to get their footing back. Over half their squad is coming back from injury, so I give them that. Keep an eye on the injury report in this game because when I look, Walker Kessler, John Collins, and Jordan Clarkson are all questionable for this game. So there is a potential that they all play. Bobby Portis is out for the Bucks. If Walker Kessler plays, which I do think he does, I think the Jazz have multiple tall defenders to throw at Giannis. I think they do present a matchup for the Bucks, and I think I want the points in my back pocket. So we're taking the Jazz plus the 9 points as our next selection of today. Let's move. In our last and final matchup of the evening, we have the LA Clippers in Phoenix taking on the Phoenix Suns. Clippers are laying 1 point, and the total is 222.5. Both of these teams come into this game at full strength. This is going to be a fun one to watch, in my opinion. The game is a true pick'em. I think the line is right where it should be. But I do think the way the Clippers have been playing recently with the return of Kawhi, they do have the slight edge here. Their last outing, whooping up on the Bucks, did impress me. I like what I saw, and I think they keep it rolling here. The Suns have won the last 3 meetings against the Clippers this season, but I think the Clippers get some revenge, return the favor a little bit in Phoenix. We're taking the Clippers money line as our last and final selection of today. And that's going to conclude today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I like today's card, and I like both of the highlighted plays of the day. Let's go get after highlighted number 28. I do this every day for free, so make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It's your boy, Yo, and I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. Peace.